A good example is that I was speaking in New Hampshire a couple of months ago, and I was talking to a guy in a machine shop. He was working 2 shifts. He said, I'm working 2 shifts because my daughter's in grad school at Cornell. Her grad school education is $54,000 a year. And he said, I'm trying to help her pay those bills. And he said, but because I took the 2nd shift and I'm working twice, not once, he said, they put me in a different tax bracket, so now the government is taking a bigger portion of my paycheck than they already were. Now, if you stop and think about that, you have to think. Here is a guy who's trying to work hard so he can send his daughter to college. Instead of us rewarding him for that, we penalize him for that. And by the way, if he'd taken that money and put it in savings, we'd have taxed the savings. If he bought real estate and sold it and made money off the transaction, we'd have taxed the capital gain. If he'd invested in the business, we'd have taxed the business as a corporate tax. Now America has the largest, most expensive corporate tax in the world, worse than France. It's pretty bad when companies are relocating to France, for heaven's sakes, because their tax rates are lower than ours. And if he died, we'd tax the inheritance. I mean, we had him coming every which way. And the poor guy, if he really wanted to make it, what we could do is just ask him to quit both those jobs, and then his daughter would qualify for some federal assistance that she couldn't qualify for because he was working too hard. Now tell me what makes sense about that. Nothing makes sense about that. So I suggest let's get rid of the current tax system we have, the one that penalizes people for being productive. Let's encourage productivity. Let's encourage people to work hard. And let's have a simple consumption tax that's a lot simpler than the 177,000-page tax code. Let's get rid of the IRS and the $250 billion a year that we spend in complying with it. And let's have a consumption tax simple enough that a 7-year-old learning to lemonade stand can understand it. And once and for all, see the $10 trillion of American capital that's moved offshore, let it come back to the United States and be working capital so we can see the Made in America brand once again on our shelves. And not every last job shipped to China, shipped to Mexico, and shipped to India. I want my children to have a chance for a job, not somebody halfway around the world and us having to learn to speak their language so that we can work for them someday. I kind of like our country. I'm also running for president because I believe that one of the things that make us unique as a country is that we have always, as a civilization and as a culture, believed in the intrinsic worth and value of every individual. Now think about what makes America unique. We treat each other with respect out of our sense of the value and worth of individuals. Our value does not come from who we are as a part of a group. Our value is internal to us. That's why our founding fathers said that we are all endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. Our founding fathers got it right. These are not rights that the government has loaned to us. These are rights that God gave to us with the very breath He put in our lungs. And they're inalienable, which means nobody can take them from us because they didn't come from anybody except from God. And these inalienable rights are the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Not necessarily the right to be happy, but the right to pursue it. But the first right, the right to life, is about the fact that we have the right to be an existing human being because we value each human being. I tell people I didn't become a person believing in the sanctity of human life because of politics. I got into politics because I believe this fundamental issue defines us as a culture and a civilization. It either lifts us up or tears us down. We have always been a nation great because one generation was willing to sacrifice its own comfort to propel the next generation to a higher level of life and liberty. The day we are a generation that sacrifices the next generation for the comfort of ourselves and the convenience of ourselves is the day which we've defied our heritage, our tradition, and our hopes and our futures. That's why this is an issue that is not small, it is not minor. It does need to be addressed in a way in which we talk about it honestly and not in some caustic and strident way, but to remind the people of this country that every life is precious and that we value them and we will work to protect and care for them. I also want to say that as president, I think it's important that when people talk about the terrors that we face, and we do, Islamic jihadism is real. We're in a different kind of war than we've ever been in. It's not a traditional border and boundary war where we can negotiate the lines of demarcation, because there are none. This is a nation that really at war with, that has no borders, because it's not a typical nation. It's not a geographical center. It's an ideology. And it's theological in its base, not political. And that means that it's a different kind of battle that we're going to have to face. And we've got to win it. We can't walk away from it. But I would also tell you that while the next president has got to make sure that he keeps his eye on what makes America safe, he better also keep his eye on the fact that there are internal battles we have to face. The health of our nation, the fact that we have to have an education system that gives our kids a chance to be competitive. We certainly need an infrastructure so that we don't see bridges collapse and roads crumble underneath our cars. And one thing that I believe would make a big difference, not just in terms of energy, but in terms of national security, is that we ought to be a country that decides that within 10 years we will be completely independent of any foreign oil, and we will have self-sustaining, renewable, and environmentally friendly energy sources that not only would include the biomass fuels that we have in our state and yours, ethanol and biofuels, but also wind and solar, nuclear, and other forms of energy, so that one day we won't be tied to anything happening in the Middle East because of oil. And we'll be able to tell the people that we've made obscenely rich in Saudi Arabia every time we use our credit cards at the gas pump. We'll be able to tell them, keep your oil. You can put it on your salads or wash your hair in it or mix it with sand. We don't care, because we don't need it anymore. We're self-sustained in our energy needs. A country that can feed itself, that can fuel itself, and that can fight for itself is free. But a country that can't feed itself, and that's why agriculture is important. A country that can't fuel itself, which means our energy independence is important. And a country that can't fight for itself, which means we've got to keep enough manufacturing base so that we can manufacture our own weapons to defend ourselves. That country is free. But a country that can't do those things is only as free as are the countries it depends on for those free things. As president, I will do everything in my power to make sure that we can feed ourselves, fuel ourselves, and fight for ourselves. And that this country won't be held at ransom by some other country. And your children will one day have to worry about who's going to allow us to be free. I want to be the president that one day is responsible for a world secure enough so that your grandchildren will laugh when you tell them how you used to put your things in a plastic bag and take your shoes off at an airport to get on a plane. Just like my kids have laughed at me when I tell them that in grade school we had to practice duck and cover because we thought that Russians were going to launch a nuclear assault against us. Some of you are nodding your heads because you're old enough to remember duck and cover. Some of you are faking like you don't know, and I know you know. Don't even act like you know. Some of you truly have no idea, but when many of us were little kids, the whole civil defense world was in full play, and we were really afraid in the Cold War that, you know, there could be bombs aimed at us. Now, first of all, I have to go back and ask myself, did I really think that the Russians were thinking that Hope, Arkansas was the prime target in the United States? The second thing is, if they had launched a nuclear strike against this country and it had aimed at Hope, Arkansas, do I really think getting under my school desk was going to save me? But still, we did those things. Sometimes I wonder if they really think that asking somebody to put their shampoo in a plastic bottle is going to save us too from terror. But we do it dutifully. I just want to one day live to see where we don't have to do it because we don't have those fears anymore. And we've secured our border. I want to tell you, before August 11th, I like the people of Iowa a lot. After August 11th, I love the people of Iowa. You guys have done more to help us than you could possibly know because we stunned people on the straw poll day things. It was in essence, the vote heard round the world.